The historical story was a type of story used in Doctor Who during the early years in the vein of educating the viewing public on historical events. Some were really good, like the Aztecs or the Crusade. Some were not so good. For example, An Unearthly Child and Black Orchid. Even if they were good, they wouldn't become as nearly as popular as the science fiction stories. So in 1966, they got rid of them, but not without one last hurrah before they were forgotten until the 80s. When they did, they also made it a new beginning by introducing one of the best companions of this series, and my fourth favorite companion, Jamie McCrimmon. Welcome back to Doctor Who Change, where we will take a look at the final historical until the 1980s and the introduction of a new companion in The Highlanders. The Highlanders was written by Elwyn Jones and Jerry Davis, directed by Hugh David, produced by Innes Lloyd, originally broadcast on Saturdays from the 17th of December 1966 to the 7th of January 1967, and currently all 4 episodes of this story are missing from the BBC archives at time of recording. We open with Episode 1. We open on Culloden Moor, where a battle ensues between the British Redcoats and the Scottish Highlanders. The Highlanders' laird is wounded and is carried across the moor to safety. In a forest, the TARDIS materializes and out steps Ben and Polly, who look around. They realize that this might be Earth as the Doctor steps out and a cannonball is thrown at them. They take a look at it on the ground as the Doctor tries to leave as Ben wanders off, so the Doctor and Polly eventually have to follow. The laird is in bed asking a Highlander, his daughter, Kirsty, for water. Jamie McCrimmon is there, and another explains that the battle is over. Jamie says that Prince Charles ran in fear, and the laird said he should be laying on the field dead with the dead, much like the prince should. They hear a noise from outside as Jamie and the other, Alexander, go outside to check as the Doctor, Ben, and Polly examine a cannon that has been spiked. The Doctor picks up a hat from the ground, and he flings it after reading the inscription. Alexander and Jamie take them prisoner. Alexander tells the laird that they are English spies and are to be killed. Polly asks the Doctor to explain, and Kirsty, once hearing that one of them was a doctor, says that to just stop trying to kill them and let them help the laird. There's a commotion where Ben is able to get a gun, and he takes everyone else hostage. Jamie and Alexander are forced to the wall while the Doctor takes a look at the laird's leg. He demands some water and sends Polly and Kirsty to get some, which they do. Once they leave, the Doctor asks for their word that they won't be molested, which they give them. So he tells Ben to put away the gun, which he shoots, accidentally attracting Redcoats. Outside, the Redcoats decide to shoot first after surrounding the cottage. Alexander goes out to attack them and is shot dead. They storm the cottage and accuse Ben of being a traitor and a deserter from the British Navy. For the second time in a while, the Doctor then does a German accent and introduces himself as Dr. von Wer, Doctor of Who, and claims that he and Ben have been waiting for an escort. The leader of the Redcoats then turns to Jamie, who introduces himself as the Piper to the laird. They decide to hang them, and Ben objects, explaining that the two should be treated as prisoners of war. The Redcoats say that they're all rebels and they'll all be sent to be hanged. At the back of the army, a Solicitor Gray watches as he calls for his secretary Perkins. They talk about how uninspiring the battle was because it lasted only an hour. They share some wine. The solicitor says that they could send the Highlanders as slaves, and says that he'll have them to make a profit from the rebellion. He then spits wine in Perkins' face for being too sour. Perkins begs for mercy, and they go about their business to take things off the battlefield that might be worth value. Kirsty and Polly head back with the water and spill it when they see the Redcoats taking away the Doctor, Ben, the laird, and Jamie to be hanged. Polly suggests that they create a diversion, but Kirsty only wishes to mourn. 2 Redcoats notice the 2 girls and decide to go after them, thinking one of them might be the prince disguised as a woman because of a rumor. Kirsty and Polly then take off running. The Doctor compliments one of the Redcoats on their superior when they offend him and decide they'll hang him quickly. They get on pedestals and their heads in nooses when Gray and Perkins come in and says that he has charge over these prisoners. When they don't give them up, Gray bribes them with coin and get Ben and Jamie down. The Doctor uses Article 17, the aliens act against them because he's a German doctor and can't be killed until it goes through the German ambassador. Because he's a doctor, they send him along with the laird in his care. They are to be sent to Inverness before being put into slavery. Kirsty and Polly find a cave to hide in from Lieutenant Finch. Kirsty explains that it is used as a cattle rig, and they search for food where they find a biscuit. Polly lets Kirsty have it, who cries over everyone being taken to jail. Polly says they must sell things for money, and they settle on Polly's bracelet and Kirsty's father's ring, but she refuses to sell it. They start to fight over it, and Polly storms out. Polly wanders out into the forest when night is falling. When she hears someone following her, she falls into a trap. Someone threatens her with a knife. This leads into episode 2, where Polly screams as it turns out to be Kirsty with the knife, who helps her up, but not before falling in herself. Polly suggests piggybacking to get out of the pit, but before they get out, they're noticed of passing soldiers. Finch yells at his men for not being able to catch 2 women and threatens them with lashes, so everyone but Finch stays behind. Kirsty starts crying again, and Polly tells her to stop, they'll be heard. She says that they can probably get Finch to fall in with them. They make some noise, which makes Finch investigate and fall in. Kirsty puts his gun to his head while they rob him, taking his money, food, identification, and some of his clothes. Kirsty blames him for her father and Jamie being taken to Inverness. At Inverness, there's been a flood in the cells that the Doctor, Ben, Jamie, and the Laird are in. The Doctor enjoys himself by shouting, "Down with King George," when he starts taking a look at the Laird. The Doctor looks up at the stars, which he reads the Laird's horoscope, to allow Jamie to believe in what he's doing. He uses a flag of the Highlanders to keep the Laird warm and starts playing a tune on his recorder, which makes the guards mad, so they storm in. The Doctor tells him he's discovered a plot against the king and demands to be taken to Solicitor Grey. Ben explains to Jamie that the Doctor is using it as a ruse. Polly counts 20 guineas and threatens Finch that they'll tell his commanding officer that he was captured by 2 girls, and that he must be their spy, as the girls piggyback their way out. Perkins and Gray discuss their operations of putting the Highlanders into slavery, even bribing a guard when the Doctor is brought in. The guard watching him leaves as Gray asks for his story, which he says that there is no plot, but a way to get his hand on £15,000 using the Highlander flag. He says as Gray questions the prisoner that carries the flag, he'll find out where the prince is and get his money. He then jumps Gray by pointing his own gun in his face. He has Gray put his hands behind him and then ties him up and gags him and sticks him in the cupboard like he would with Hitler nearly 50 years later. There's a knock, and Perkins enters, and the Doctor explains that Gray is sick and has gone to lie down. He makes a big deal out of Perkins' eyes. He holds Perkins' head to examine them and asks if Perkins suffers from headaches. When he says no, he slams his head onto the table and asks again. He says his head does ache, and that the Doctor says of course he does. He says Perkins must rest or else he will go blind. He blindfolds him to ensure rest when Gray starts knocking as the Doctor puts Perkins to sleep. A sergeant finds Finch in the hole and says he isn't used to pull officers out of pits, and the officers will be very dry when they're done. Finch tries to pay him off, but doesn't have any money, and promises to pay at Inverness, so they pull him out anyway. A consort of Gray's finds Perkins and takes off the blindfold. He rescues Gray, and they summon the watch and start loading the prisoners. At an inn, a washerwoman who lets in soldiers while the Doctor sneaks in and steals some bread and fish before going back into hiding, where he changes clothes into women's clothing. Trash, Gray's consort, loads Ben, Jamie, and the Laird out of prison. The Doctor arrives disguised in woman's clothing, which Ben bumps into. Trash throws the Doctor aside and throws him in a room in the back of the inn where there's a passage to the water. I start going down and are forced onto a boat where Ben suggests making a break for it, but Jamie can't swim. The boat heads towards the docks. The Doctor brings soup for Trask and gives it to the soldiers who sit inside, which the Doctor slips in where he sees the trapdoor. Trask assures the prisoners that if any of them try to escape, they will drown instantly. This leads into episode 3, where Ben and Jamie are told to stay in a cramped area below the deck of the ship. When they protest, they are threatened with Trask's cutlass. The Laird tells them to be grateful to be alive. He then says that his fever's gone, and Ben asks, another prisoner explains that they'll be slaves. They threaten to kill Ben for being British, but the Laird tells him that Ben's a friend who deserted the English Navy. The prisoner says that he was friends with Trask, who betrayed him. Ben explains that Trask isn't selling them for King George, but as slaves, within the confines of the law. Polly waits for Kirsty to get back and tries Finch's pistol. Kirsty comes back with supplies, including oranges. Polly explains that because Scottish orange sellers would sell the soldiers, it's a perfect disguise. They will use it to get in and find out where they took the Doctor, Ben, and Jamie. Finch makes it to an inn where he gets some wine and relaxes for a bit. Polly and Kirsty go through the inn as they're harassed, and a sergeant takes them to Finch, while the Doctor, disguised as a washerwoman, watches. He recognizes them, and Polly makes Finch tell the soldiers that they're old friends, as the sergeant crawls the soldiers up and leaves so they can be a little more private. Finch asks what they could want, and Polly asks where the Doctor, Ben, and Jamie are. He says he doesn't know, and they need Solicitor Grey to find out. Polly lets him leave and sleep for the night, while the Doctor tries to make his way to the girls, but Perkins bumps into him and apologizes. Perkins meets with Polly and Kirsty and says that Grey is giving prisoners a choice between life and death and will be along shortly. On the ship, Grey reads off a note that says they can either be slaves in America or be hanged hanged in the name of the king. They get out contracts to sign for slavery, but no one gets up originally. One of the prisoners, the one from earlier called McKay, states that none of them would survive the work in America. Gray continues saying that if they wish to sign, go forward. Some, even most, including Ben, go up to sign, but Ben tears up all the contracts up and is knocked out and chained up. Perkins drinks and Holly encourages they must go off, but Perkins blackmails them into staying. He supports just playing a game of whist when the doctor comes in and demands to play, even revealing himself. When Gray enters, Polly starts dealing. He's mad and that Perkins is slacking off and demands more contracts, so he goes to get them, but not before the doctor says that he saw nothing unless he wants another headache. He says that the 3 girls are going to leave and that he can leave in 10 minutes. The doctor, Polly, and Kirsty go to the barn where they hid in earlier, and the doctor reveals that his gun wasn't loaded. Polly says that they have to do something while the doctor goes to sleep, not before revealing where Ben and Jamie are. Polly suggests capturing the ship, and the doctor says that the Highlanders should leave and go to France. Polly asks if they have a plan for them, which he does. He has an idea. He needs to buy weapons in a rowing boat and smuggle them aboard the ship when he finally falls asleep. Gray and Perkins row themselves toward the boat where they demand to speak with Trask. He tells him that he needs to get 2 signed contracts and any of them tear them up to shoot them on sight. He also says that until America use a light fist to drown the unconscious Ben, who is tied up. He sends Perkins below to get him. The next day, the doctor arrives with the swords used along with other pistols. He examines Christie's ring, which has the steward's to the prince's seal. Kirsty reveals that the laird got the ring from the prince, and the doctor says that this ring will save the prince's life. On the ship, Ben is thrust over the side of the ship and into the ocean, all tied up, presumably to drown. This leads into episode 4. When they haul the rope up, Ben is missing from it. He was able to free himself and makes it ashore. He stops for breath when a British sentry comes and threatens him. It turns out to be the doctor in a mustache who is trying to get the weapons aboard the boat. On the ship, Gray is presented the signed contracts and they plan to sail in the morning tide, fog or no fog. He and Trask argue whether they need the contracts so they can secretly sell the slaves within the king's law. Ben is taken to Polly and Kirsty where he explained when he was tied up, he flexed, and when he was thrown into the sea, he relaxed his muscles so he could easily escape. They explain that Polly and Kirsty will pass the weapons through the portholes while the doctor distracts them. Ben also is going to do something special. McKay, the laird, and Jamie discuss their imminent death. The doctor is taken to Gray's office on the boat where he asks if he can be let go, and he has a token for Gray. Surprisingly, they let him go, and he feigns losing it. He takes out Kirsty's ring and shows it to Gray. He explains that he knows that Prince Charles, the Highlander, is hiding and will give him up for 10,000 guineas. And outside, Polly and Kirsty row to the porthole. Kirsty talks to her father through the window, where she gives him a pistol. Gray agrees, and along with the other weapons. Gray agrees to the doctor's terms and explains that the prince is on the ship. He explains that the prince was the piper, Jamie. Perkins, Gray, Trask, and the doctor go on to find the prince. They go below and they head towards the sleeping prisoners. The doctor says they found him as Trask head towards Jamie as the prisoners spring to light and start a fight. McKay confronts Trask and they engage in one-on-one combat. Ben appears behind Trask, allowing Jamie to swing down and throw him overboard. The battle is won and McKay has the prisoners prepared to set sail as Kirsty and Polly get aboard so the doctor and Ben meet up with them. They decide to take Gray as a hostage and Perkins offers to be the laird's secretary because he can speak French. Dr. Ben and Polly take Gray ashore where they see the Highlanders off. Polly writes not saying goodbye with Jamie, who actually just turns out to be right behind them, saying that he wants to help them get back to the TARDIS. A redcoat comes around and Gray shouts for help, and when the redcoat takes him to the place that they're hiding, the doctor jumps him. Sadly, Gray escapes, so they decide to use Finch. They sneak up on Finch, when they show his leader the ring, he makes Finch go with them. So they go to the TARDIS. When they get to the blockade just before the TARDIS, Polly gives back his ID and explains what Gray did. They meet Gray, who tries to convince them that he had contracts, which he tries to get them out of his pockets. They happen to be gone, so Finch has a redcoat take him away to be arrested. They say goodbye to Finch, and Polly kisses on the cheek, and Jamie asks where the contracts went. In the doctor's pockets, of course. So without further ado, they get back to the TARDIS. Jamie's going to go with them on Ben and Polly's request, so Ben opens the door while Polly drags Jamie inside as they dematerialize. Let's go into the character review for Jamie McCrimmon. Jamie McCrimmon, played by Fraser Hines, traveled with the Doctor from the Highlanders until the second Doctor's final story, The War Games. He was a Highlander from Scotland and was able to make himself one of the best companions in the entire show. His chemistry with Patrick Troughton is extremely entertaining to watch, along with the rest of the regular cast at any given time. He's one of the most comical companions there was, and not always understanding technology quite well as others would lead to some great moments. So all in all, I give Jamie 5 out of 5 stars. Final thoughts? I hate that this story is missing because it's a very visual story and that can't really be captured in any reconstruction that's made. It features 2 big battles that go on for a while and there isn't much dialogue in certain scenes, so the reconstructions don't work as well. But it can be dealt with if you just imagine what happens in these gaps. I mean, other than that, I couldn't help but find the first 2 parts a little bit boring and tedious. Although things happen in them, the characters aren't very interesting. Kirsty in particular being a very whiny character who really is there so Polly can have someone to work off of and provide the ultimate solution to the problem. Patrick Troughton does shine in episodes 2, 3, and 4 when he's confronting Gray and Perkins, or dressed as the washerwoman or soldier, and the comments that Polly makes about him are also pretty funny. I mean, aside from the battle at the end and McKay's speech about Gray handing out the contracts, all the scenes on the set on the ship are also kind of boring and there for exposition. That also needs some more screen time to flesh out, because he really was just there to be the leader, although he really only gave a little bit of advice at certain points. So, all in all, I give Doctor Who, The Highlanders, a 60% for simply being kind of average. It would be 50 if it wasn't for Troughton's performance, you know. If you want to buy the story, which, although it is average, I can say it makes a good listen for Troughton's performance, pick up the CD released in 2000 with linking narration by Fraser Hines, or try to find the loose cannon reconstruction somewhere. Again, their website's been down for a couple of days, anyway, so I don't know if you can get that anymore. Thanks for watching Doctor Who Change, and I'll see you next time with The Faceless Ones.